Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Transcript. I am your host, JT, and I am going to be your captain aboard this extremely horrible episode tonight. And by extremely horrible, I mean the content. I am trying out the new starting soon intro, concluding, outro, all that stuff. So let me know in the comments what you think about it. Don't blow smoke. Let me know. I kind of like the idea of like the detective idea, so trying that out. I'm a fan. So anyways, welcome again to The Transcript. We are starting part dos 2 ni spy. That's all I know. That's all I got. Starting part 2 of Sean Combs' indictment and all of the documents surrounding it. And we just got a new one yesterday, I believe. I'm going to talk briefly about that in the beginning. We're going to catch you up on some news that's going on in this case. And then, hey ho, that's Friday at 9. Oh, it's going to be a good one. Hello, everybody, by the way. Thank you for joining. So let's talk a little bit about the news that's going on surrounding this case. The first thing I want to bring up is not necessarily like news, but maybe it is. 50 Cent is producing a documentary about Sean Diddy Combs' abuse case at Netflix. I think the other day I had made a joke as if he was making it called Diddy Do It. I don't know if he's actually making that the title. However, it is true that he is running this project. So on Wednesday, September 25th, a rep for In Da Club rapper 50 Cent, whose real name is Curtis Jackson 49, confirmed the news to People. Quote, "This is a story with significant human impact. It is a complex narrative spanning decades, not just the headlines or clips seen so far," Jackson and director Alexandria Stapleton said in a statement to People. Quote, "We remain steadfast in our commitment to give a voice to the voiceless and to present authentic and nuanced perspectives. While the allegations are disturbing, we urge all to remember that Sean Combs' story is not the full story of hip-hop and its culture. We aim to ensure that individual actions do not overshadow the culture's broader contributions," the statement continued. Netflix commissioned the project earlier this year, and a premiere date has yet to be determined. In May, Deadline reported that Jackson announced the streaming service won the bidding war. He's never shied away from expressing his disapproval of Combs in 54, or who's 54. He opened up why he never attended the Diddy parties at the center of an ongoing federal investigation. He said, quote, "I've been very vocal about not going to Puffy parties and doing shit like that. I've been staying out of that for years. It's just an uncomfortable energy connected to it." The television 50 Cent also said he asked to take me shopping. "I thought that was the weirdest thing in the world because that might be something that a man says to a woman." It's a little misogynistic, but whatever. And I'm just like, nah, I'm not fucking with this weird energy or weird shit. Coming off the way he was just moving, from that, I wasn't comfortable around him. I think that's the key right there, that last sentence. So he said, "Coming soon." Jackson captioned a September 25th tweet with a photo of Diddy oil, presumably referring to the 1,000 bottles of baby oil and a lubricant confiscated during raids of Combs' Los Angeles and Miami homes in March. So, you know what? First off, I hope that it's tasteful, and I hope that he does do a good job, and I hope he does justice to the victims. That statement alone gives me hope. And hopefully it doesn't re-victimize. Hopefully it tells their story in a way that can get a larger message and thematic element out there in terms of how important it is to pay attention to people who come forward. So, all right. Now also, and I said we were going to get to this tonight, and we are. New lawsuit accuses Sean Combs of rape, recording, assault, later distributed as porn. Another woman's come forward with sexual assault allegations against Sean Diddy Combs. Thalia Graves alleges that Combs and his bodyguard, Joseph Sherman, tied her up and violently raped her in a Bad Boys recording studio the summer of 2001, recorded the attack without her knowledge, and later distributed the video as pornography. We're going to read the document, and so I'm not going to get too much. I won't get too much into this story because we'll hear it from primary source. But Graves is now the 11th plaintiff to file a civil suit against the hip-hop figure since last fall. In November of 2023, Cassie Ventura, whose document we're reading now and we're in the middle of, an ex-girlfriend of Combs, detailed a decade of alleged abuse. Anyways, he's repeatedly asserted his innocence. I don't think so. So there's a lot that he's, excuse my French, he's fucked. And I've never been happier to say it. So let's get into it, shall we? That's what the beginning of the show says. And so we should do that. We also should have the correct overlay. Hey, there it is. Look at the new overlay. It's pretty. All right. So let's do this, shall we? All right. So we ended on like 46, line 46. However, I want to go back just a little bit. We'll just kind of Tarantino it to 39, and then we'll get moving. All right. So, and again, not very many. You're not getting jokes out of me tonight. Not really. So this stuff's terrible. And if this is triggering to you, you probably like. You can give it a try, but I'm not going to be sad if you leave and come back, on Friday for Hey Ho Show, which is much different. All right, 2, Mr. Combs lures Miss Ventura into a relationship. 39, despite her clear rejection of Mr. Combs' advances, Mr. Combs continued to demand Miss Ventura spend time with him, including for a weekend at Mr. Combs' residence in Miami and for nights out in New York City. 40, on one particular night around... I'm going to skip reading the numbers. On one particular night around September 2007, Mr. Combs insisted on taking Miss Ventura out. Miss Ventura acquiesced, fearing that rejecting Mr. Combs' request would have repercussions for her album deal with Mr. Combs and his company, Bad Boy Records. Mr. Combs picked up Miss Ventura from her apartment in Manhattan in a blue luxury vehicle. Miss Ventura was surprised that when she got into the car, Mr. Combs was already inebriated. He handed her a pill and told her to take it. When Miss Ventura asked what the pill was, Mr. Combs dismissed her and told her she would like it. She later learned the pill was ecstasy, something Miss Ventura had never before tried and did not want to try. This was the first time Mr. Combs got Miss Ventura high. Mr. Combs then proceeded to drive recklessly at very high speeds down the West Side Highway of Manhattan. Miss Ventura was very scared, but did not dare to object to Mr. Combs, who appeared drunk, high, and agitated. Mr. Combs took Miss Ventura to an upscale lounge in downtown Manhattan, where he proceeded to get into an altercation with the security staff who would not permit Mr. Combs to enter, presumably because he was belligerent. Miss Ventura decided to go home, but for the remainder of... Nope, that's sure not going to help us. If I made you dizzy, so sorry. But for the remainder of the night, Mr. Combs messaged Miss Ventura incessantly, complaining that she left him high and alone. In early fall of 2007, Mr. Combs flexed his power and influence when he paid a promoter to create a fake flyer for a party hosted by Miss Ventura. This fake posting allowed Miss Ventura to have an excuse to go to Miami, Florida, and get her away from her boyfriend by using the guise of a legitimate event she had to attend. Miss Ventura was stunned at how easily Mr. Combs was able to recruit others to lie for him. Miss Ventura was uncomfortable with the fake flyer because the request to go to Miami was made by the owner of a record label, and because she was scared to go against his wishes and face repercussions to her nascent career. Miss Ventura agreed to join Mr. Combs in Florida. During this trip to Miami, Mr. Combs provided Miss Ventura with copious amounts of drugs. She became more intoxicated than she ever had before, and her intoxication lasted throughout the weekend trip. As she wanted Mr. Combs to continue to support her career, she felt she could not refuse Mr. Combs's urging her to take more drugs. After providing her with drugs, Mr. Combs had sexual intercourse with Miss Ventura during this trip. Within 2 years of meeting Mr. Combs, Miss Ventura found herself lured into the immediate circle of her boss, the owner of her record label, and one of the most powerful men in the entertainment industry. Mr. Combs exerts control over Miss Ventura's career and personal life. From the very start of their relationship, Mr. Combs exerted his power and influence over Miss Ventura. This dynamic was fueled by their nearly 20-year age difference, as well as their relative positions in the entertainment industry. With Mr. Combs considered a music mogul, and Miss Ventura at the very start of her career as an entertainer. Mr. Combs' aggressive and demanding approach to those he worked with made it impossible for anyone to challenge him. And Miss Ventura soon learned that Mr. Combs insisted on blind loyalty from everyone in his inner circle. Although Miss Ventura had saved up some earnings from her young modeling career, Mr. Combs' ostentatious display of wealth was intimidating to her. Mr. Combs paid for things with, quote, wads of cash, and would repeatedly tell Miss Ventura, "Don't worry about money. I have money." Mr. Combs expensed lavish vacations for him and Miss Ventura, purchased a car for her, paid for her apartment, and provided her with extensive amounts of designer clothing. Around 2008 or 2009, Mr. Combs began to rent an apartment in Manhattan for Miss Ventura. The apartment was within walking distance of Mr. Combs' New York residence. He first showed Miss Ventura the apartment by bringing her there along with her parents. Miss Ventura's parents were skeptical of the mogul's displays of wealth, but proud of their daughter's newfound success. Around 2010, Mr. Combs similarly paid for an apartment for Miss Ventura in Los Angeles, which was located about 5 minutes away from Mr. Combs' residence. He paid for many of her apartments in California and also purchased a Jaguar for her around 2013 or 2014. All aspects of Miss Ventura's life were controlled by either Mr. Combs or his management companies. Every event Miss Ventura attended, from the travel to the makeup and clothing, was paid for directly by Mr. Combs and his affiliated companies. There's investing in talent, and then there's this. Compounding this all-encompassing intrusion into her life, Mr. Combs secured his control over the young and impressionable Miss Ventura by introducing her to a drug-fueled lifestyle that kept her complacent and compliant. Mr. Combs first introduced Miss Ventura to opiates around 2008 and would often have pills and other drugs out in the open like candy. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs has been addicted to prescription painkillers and took ecstasy frequently. At first, Miss Ventura was given the prescriptions that Mr. Combs received from a doctor in Miami, Florida. Eventually, when Mr. Combs exhausted his supply of pills, he demanded that Miss Ventura procure prescriptions from this Miami doctor in her own name. Mr. Combs also became deeply involved in Miss Ventura's personal life, with his personal staff attending to Miss Ventura's day-to-day travel and other needs, including medical care. On multiple occasions, Mr. Combs had Miss Ventura's personal medical records sent directly to his email address. For instance, when Miss Ventura began experiencing memory loss, potentially due to excessive drug use and or head injuries caused by Mr. Combs' beatings, as described below, her MRI results were provided directly to Mr. Combs. Mr. Combs also repeatedly arranged for his staff to drive Miss Ventura to certain doctors' appointments. Did the doctors not think this was weird? Like, at some point, you've got to look past the insurance payment and the copay and look kind of into, I don't know, what's wrong, which is all of this. They should be looked at. The doctor should be looked at. You don't. I mean, it's probably what she did was he probably made her sign an ROI or release of information and included him in it. which is not correct. But it's legal. In this way, Mr. Combs exerted, let's see. No, I don't. Well, I think good point. I don't think. No, I think he probably kept her pretty compliant and high most of the time, but also he had, on top of that, exerted power, over her. And she was living in an apartment or apartments by him. She had cars by him. All of this stuff was paid by him. So if she doesn't have that anymore, she's got nothing. So she's kind of stuck. So it's definitely not, it's not her fault. But yes, if she signs an ROI, they follow it. And a lot of times they sign an ROI. The ROI is entered into a system, and those records can be accessed or sent automatically. So, in this way, Mr. Combs exerted ownership over Miss Ventura. As another example of the ways in which he manipulated Miss Ventura and ensured obedience early on in their relationship, he asked Miss Ventura what she called her grandfather. When Mr. Ventura said that she referred to her grandfather as Pop Pop, Mr. Combs perversely insisted that Miss Ventura refer to him with that nickname. Gross. Gross. Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura's relationship becomes violent and abusive. What started as a whirlwind of celebrity meetings and drug and alcohol-fueled parties, however, quickly turned frightening and violent. Miss Ventura was also exposed to the intense violence that pervaded Mr. Combs' rise to fame. For example, on one occasion when Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura were using drugs together in his home, one of his security staff barged in and announced that, is it Shuge? I don't know how to pronounce that. Knight, a longtime rival of Mr. Combs, was spotted at Mel's Drive-In Diner in Los Angeles. Mr. Combs began to get dressed, retrieved multiple guns from a safe, and ran out of his home to where he believed Mr. Knight was dining. Miss Ventura became terrified and began to cry. On at least 2 occasions, Mr. Combs demanded that Miss Ventura hold Mr. Combs' gun in her purse. Miss Ventura had no familiarity with guns and was petrified that the firearm would accidentally go off in her purse. There was no clear reason why Mr. Combs required her to hold his guns, except to reinforce to his young girlfriend that he was violent, powerful, and dangerous. Over the next decade, multiple times each year, Mr. Combs would violently beat Miss Ventura, leaving bruises on her body. After every instance in which he beat Miss Ventura, Mr. Combs used his money and power to orchestrate extensive efforts to hide the evidence of his abuse, including by hiding Miss Ventura in hotels for days at a time to let her bruises heal. In one such instance, after a party with Jay-Z, Mr. Combs beat Miss Ventura repeatedly in an Escalade, including by kicking and hitting her. He forced her out of the vehicle on 5th Avenue in New York City. She was eventually able to hail a cab and get to her apartment in Manhattan, where she cried in fear, realizing there was no one she could tell about what had happened at the hands of this incredibly powerful man. She spent the subsequent 3 days hiding in her apartment. In January of 2009, after Mr. Combs learned that Miss Ventura spoke to another music manager at a party in Los Angeles, he became enraged. She had hoped speaking to this manager would allow her to further grow her career, and that Mr. Combs would be happy for her. But instead, he became extremely angry and pulled her out of the club where the party was taking place. In the car leaving the club, Mr. Combs beat Miss Ventura, pushing her into a corner of the vehicle and stomping on her face. Mr. Combs' security staff, Roger Bonds, tried to stop the beating but was unable to de-escalate the situation. When the car arrived at Mr. Combs' residence, Miss Ventura attempted to run away, but Mr. Combs followed her and proceeded again to kick her in the face. Miss Ventura was bleeding profusely and was ushered into Mr. Combs' home, where she began to throw up from the violent assault. Upon recognizing the damage he had done and the physical evidence of his abuse, Mr. Combs panicked and forced his staff to bring Miss Ventura to a hotel suite at the London Hotel in Los Angeles, where she was required to stay for a week. During this stay, as her injuries from the beating healed, Miss Ventura began to fully realize that Mr. Combs' tremendously loyal network not only knew about and witnessed his assault, but also that these witnesses were not willing to do anything meaningful to stop Mr. Combs' behavior. She recognized that she was powerless, and that reporting Mr. Combs to the authorities would not alter Mr. Combs' status or influence, but would merely give Mr. Combs another excuse to hurt her. I can't imagine having something so traumatic occur to me and have no one to talk to be cornered in which you turn around and it's literally just wall and there's no lifeline. It's just terrible. While in the hotel, she asked to go home to her parents, but Mr. Combs wouldn't let her leave. She lied to her mother when asked about an online gossip forum that reported the assault. Mr. Combs proceeded to instruct his assistant to purchase excessive amounts of gifts for Miss Ventura. Here it is. Love bombing. Which were if you can call it that, which were delivered to the hotel room where she remained trapped. Miss Ventura was terrified, isolated, and unable to see a pathway out of Mr. Combs' abusive hold on her life. She found herself becoming numb to the abuse she was experiencing and became entirely beholden to Mr. Combs' demands. She began to blindly follow his instructions out of fear of again being on the receiving end of a vicious beating. By Mr. Combs' own admission, his relationship with Miss Ventura was like Bobby and Whitney, a clear acknowledgement of the unequal power dynamic and excessive domestic violence that permeated their relationship. From the outside looking in, Miss Ventura had heard others refer to her relationship with Mr. Combs as akin to Ike and Tina. Her volatile and abusive partner, who also owned her label and therefore held her future success in his hands, had fully exerted control over every aspect of her life. Mr. Combs forces Miss Ventura into sex trafficking. Again, there's a lot. There's a lot here. We're gonna put that up. Should have done that in the beginning, but I had that. Hopefully, that opening warning card was enough. Okay. This is just like, it's a horror story, and just when you don't think it could get, just when you think it couldn't get any worse, it just sinks. It's like, it's coming, right? Oh boy. That's a heck of a book. I'm looking it up right now. Duck, Duck, Groom, Understanding How a Child Becomes a Target. And that's about more than, I'm sure just children. When did this come out? This came out 2023. 93% of child sexual abuse victims know and trust their abuser. Straight talk parents need to know. Interesting. If you're interested in looking at this book, I'm gonna put the link inside of the chat there. It in no way is a, I'm not saying that I sponsor it. I haven't read it, but it looks interesting and it looks sourced. So thanks for sharing that, Nan. Within a few months of beginning a romantic relationship with 40-year-old Mr. Combs, the 22-year-old Miss Ventura felt beholden to his whims and demands. While in New York City, Mr. Combs told Miss Ventura that he wanted to engage in a fantasy of his called voyeurism. Mr. Combs said that it would turn him on if he saw Miss Ventura with another dick. The first time Mr. Combs hired a man and brought them... really concerned about where this is going. The first time Mr. Combs hired a man and brought the man to his home in Los Angeles, then the man, Mr. Combs, and Miss Ventura wore masquerade masks and ingested drugs. Mr. Combs directed Miss Ventura to perform sexual acts with this man while Mr. Combs watched them. He masturbated while he directed Miss Ventura and the man to do specific sexual acts. The encounter lasted multiple days. Mr. Combs began to call the arrangement a freak-off, or FO. He would repeatedly tell Miss Ventura at random moments that he wanted an FO, and Miss Ventura was eventually expected to facilitate the location and the hiring of male sex workers. At certain points during Miss Ventura and Mr. Combs' relationship, he would insist on an FO weekly. Mr. Combs would repeatedly tell Miss Ventura that this practice was, quote, our thing and our secret. FOs would often take place in hotel suites, including at the Trump International Hotel in Columbus Circle, L'Hermitage, Beverly Hills, the London Hotel in Los Angeles, the Intercontinental Century City, the Intercontinental Atlanta, the Intercontinental New York City, the One Hotel in New York and in Miami, the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in New York and in Miami, the Fontainebleau in Miami, the Beverly Hills Hotel, and Shutters on the Beach in Los Angeles. Call them out. On one occasion around 2013, Mr. Combs had an FO set up at the Intercontinental Hotel in New York City, after which he was charged with tens of thousands of dollars in damages by the hotel. I think it was $40,000. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs' chief of staff, Tony Fletcher, paid the invoice charged by the hotel. Miss Ventura was eventually instructed to use websites and escort services to find male sex workers to participate in the FOs. Mr. Combs told Miss Ventura to search for, quote, large black penises on the website. Sometimes Mr. Combs would pay to fly male sex workers to his location, including to multiple cities in the United States as well as abroad. He required Miss Ventura and his staff to help him make these arrangements. Mr. Combs' assistants would help to set up the FOs, including by setting up the hotel suites with baby oil and Astroglide. Mr. Combs always supplied Miss Ventura and the sex worker with copious amounts of drugs, and during the FOs, Miss Ventura was given ecstasy, cocaine, GHB, ketamine, marijuana, and alcohol in excessive amounts during FOs, which allowed her to disassociate during these horrific encounters. It became commonplace to get IV fluids in the days after an FO to recover from the excessive substances pushed upon her. God damn it. Miss Ventura was required to dress up in lingerie for an FO, and Mr. Combs insisted she wear white nail polish to contrast her nails with the skin of the black men he hired to have sex with her. During the FO, Mr. Combs would instruct Miss Ventura to pour excessive amounts of oil over herself. Mr. Combs would then instruct Miss Ventura and the sex workers to speak to each other, and then would specifically tell Miss Ventura where to touch the sex workers. Mr. Combs would say things like, quote, grab that big black dick, and ask her, quote, how does it feel, as he directed her to perform for him. God. During the FOs, in addition to directing Miss Ventura and masturbating, Mr. Combs would use his phone, laptop, and tablet to film Miss Ventura having sex with the hired sex worker. He treated the forced encounter as a personal art project, adjusting the candles he used for lighting to frame the videos he took. YouTube, I'm reading a document. Please don't put me through training again. While Miss Ventura quickly deleted any photographs or videos or video of sex acts if they were taken on her phone, Mr. Combs repeatedly made clear that he retained many videos of Miss Ventura during FOs. Even when she deleted the videos, Mr. Combs would tell Miss Ventura that he was able to recover deleted videos from her devices. On one occasion, he sat next to her on a flight and made her watch a video she thought she had deleted, reinforcing her inability to escape the immense power he held over her. Mr. Combs would pay the male sex workers a few $1,000s in cash for their services. During some FOs, Mr. Combs would become extremely intoxicated and would hit Miss Ventura in front of the male sex workers. Miss Ventura was repulsed by Mr. Combs' demands, but between the physical beating and recognizing his incredible power and incredible temper, Miss Ventura became petrified of her partner and boss and felt that she could not say no. He even would present her with lavish gifts prior to or in the middle of the FOs, seemingly acknowledging the ways in which these forced sexual encounters constituted, quote, work for Miss Ventura, and that he needed to compensate her for this work. At one point, he had given her so many designer bracelets for FOs, and immediately following his brutal beatings, that she felt that she was shackled by his presence. Frequently, her anxiety before an FO would become so great that she would become physically ill, sometimes to the point of vomiting. While kneeling over the toilet, Mr. Combs would shame her into performing for him, eventually forcing her to get up and proceed with the encounter. She knew firsthand that telling Mr. Combs that she did not want to engage in FOs was met with anger and violence. In addition, any suggestions that Miss Ventura would refuse the refuse the FO or otherwise report Mr. Combs' abuse was met with ultimatums by Mr. Combs, who would say that Miss Ventura could not go to the police because she had, quote, a lot to lose. Around 2015, for example, in the middle of a surprise birthday dinner for Miss Ventura's 29th birthday, Mr. Combs insisted that Miss Ventura leave the party and go to a hotel for an FO. When she expressed that she did not want to go, Mr. Combs had Miss Ventura cornered by his security staff in order to force her to leave with him. After this FO, Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura went back to the hotel room that Miss Ventura was staying in, where some of Miss Ventura's friends were already hanging out. Mr. Combs was severely intoxicated, and at one point during the night, picked up one of Miss Ventura's friends like a child and dangled the friend over the balcony of a 17th floor hotel suite. Can you tell that I have not read this? What? Miss Ventura and her friends were scared by Mr. Combs' erratic behavior, but Miss Ventura was heavily sedated because of the drugs she took to participate in the FO, and therefore was unable to respond to Mr. Combs' terrifying behavior. The FOs became work for Miss Ventura, and despite her protestations, Mr. Combs insisted on these intricately staged and forced sexual encounters between Miss Ventura and various male sex workers. Wow. I haven't heard that part reported anywhere. Has anybody else? I have not heard the 17th floor story reported anywhere. That's insane. To me, that's attempted murder. I mean, seriously, just slap one more charge. Or negligence or mayhem, something. Miss Ventura tries to escape Mr. Combs' abuse. Anytime she tried to create distance between her and Mr. Combs, he used his networks to find her and convince her to return to his abuse. On multiple occasions, Mr. Combs sent his employees to lure Miss Ventura back. Couldn't do it himself. In 2011, during a rough patch in Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura's relationship, that's an interesting choice of words, Miss Ventura had a brief relationship with musician Kid Cudi. Is it Cudi? It's Cudi, right? I sound so ignorant right now. Or like I'm 80. Somebody's going to tell me, hopefully. Yes, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Nan. I appreciate it. When Mr. Combs returned from a trip, he demanded another FO of Miss Ventura. She acquiesced. Thanks, Bells. During this FO, Mr. Combs found Miss Ventura's phone and found emails between her and Kid Cudi. Mr. Combs became enraged and proceeded to place a manual corkscrew between his fingers and lunged at Miss Ventura. Miss Ventura ran away to stay at Kid Cudi's home to escape Mr. Combs' wrath. Soon thereafter, one of Mr. Combs' staff members told Miss Ventura that he needed, quote, to just talk to that she needed to, quote, just talk to Mr. Combs. Even though Mr. Combs was enraged. Feeling like she could not escape Mr. Combs and his network of enforcers, Miss Ventura returned to Mr. Combs. He hit her several times and then kicked her in the back as she tried to run out the door. She went to her parents' home in Connecticut, where her mother took pictures of the bruises Mr. Combs had left on Miss Ventura's body. In February of 2012, during Paris Fashion Week, Mr. Combs told Miss Ventura that he was going to blow up Kid Cudi's car, and that he wanted to ensure Kid Cudi was home with his friends when it happened. Around that time, Kid Cudi's Kid Cudi's car exploded in his driveway. Miss Ventura was terrified as she began to fully comprehend what Mr. Combs was both willing and able to do to those he believed had slighted him. In 2015, Miss Ventura spoke to a popular music manager at an after-party in a hotel suite in Las Vegas. Mr. Combs saw her speaking to this manager and sternly told her to step into the bedroom adjoining the suite. In the bedroom, Mr. Combs beat Miss Ventura severely. She ran from corner to corner of the room, trying to avoid Mr. Combs' beating and kicking. When she tried to lock herself in the bathroom, he pushed through and punched and kicked her while she curled up under the toilet. Her screams were drowned out by the loud music playing in the outside area of the hotel suite. When Mr. Combs, head of security and assistant, saw Miss Ventura after the assault, they began to cry. Miss Ventura had 2 black eyes, a burst and bruised lip, and a huge welt on her forehead. Upon seeing the results of his vicious attack, Mr. Combs immediately took steps to conceal his wrongdoing. He forced Miss Ventura to stay at his home in Holmby Hills, along with one of his sons. While there, Mr. Combs FaceTimed Miss Ventura and stated, quote, "You gotta go up and put more makeup on. My son can't see you like that." She did put makeup on, per Mr. Combs' demands. Miss Ventura felt that she had no choice but to obey her abuser. Even though security guards, assistants, and friends saw the situation she was in, no one dared to help her or speak up on her behalf. She therefore had no choice but to remain subservient. We are talking about a large span of years here, and you know every single day felt like a decade for her. Later in 2015, while shooting a movie in Cape Town, South Africa, Miss Ventura began a flirtatious relationship with an actor. She spent New Year's Eve with this actor, but Mr. Combs soon found out. Mr. Combs called the actor and threatened him. The actor proceeded to call Miss Ventura and tell her, quote, "You really need to call Mr. Combs." In or around March 2016, during an FO at the Intercontinental Hotel in Century City, Los Angeles, Mr. Combs became extremely intoxicated and punched Miss Ventura in the face, giving her a black eye. After he fell asleep, Miss Ventura tried to leave the hotel room. But as she exited, Mr. Combs awoke and began screaming at Miss Ventura. He followed her into the hallway of the hotel while yelling at her. He grabbed at her, then took the glass. I think this is from the video that they released. He grabbed at her and then took glass vases in the hallway and threw them at her, causing glass to crash around them as she ran to the elevator to escape. She managed to get into the elevator, and when she got into the lobby, quickly took a cab. Nope, this isn't it. Quickly took a cab to her apartment. Excuse me. Upon realizing that her running away would cause Mr. Combs to be even angrier with her, and completely stuck in his vicious cycle of abuse, Miss Ventura returned to the hotel with the intention of apologizing for running away from her abuser. When she returned, hotel security staff urged her to get back into the cab and go to her apartment, suggesting that they had seen the security footage showing Mr. Combs beating Miss Ventura and throwing glass at her in the hotel hallway. Yeah, this is it. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs paid the Intercontinental Century City $50,000 for the hallway security footage from that evening. After this, Miss Ventura left her home in Comstock and went to hide away at a friend's home in Florida. James Cruz, president of Bad Boy Management, tracked Miss Ventura down and told her that her single would not be released if she did not answer Mr. Combs' phone calls. Arrest him too. A woman who worked at Sony Music reached out to her with a similar ultimatum concerning her record. Arrest them too. Incredibly, Mr. Combs even convinced one of his attorneys to call Miss Ventura at this time. This lawyer told Miss Ventura that, quote, "It's in your best interest to call Mr. Combs back. Arrest them too." Each time Miss Ventura tried to run away, Mr. Combs and his powerful network would force her back to him. Mr. Combs' tight hold over her life had irreparably had damaged her friendships. My mouth doesn't want to work tonight. Around 2018, that's true, man, that is very true. The first person that he tried to give money to get the video said absolutely not. And I think he tried actually a couple of people before he ended up getting somebody who was like, 50, sure, I'll abandon all morals if I had any to begin with. Money talks. Mr. Combs' tight hold over her life had damaged her friendships. Around 2018, when Miss Ventura was with her friend Carrie Morgan in her house, Mr. Combs used his key to Miss Ventura's house and came in unannounced. He and Miss Morgan had an altercation, during which Mr. Combs threw a hanger at Miss Morgan. Upon information and belief, the incident resulted in a settlement between Mr. Combs and Miss Morgan, and Miss Ventura ended up paying Miss Wait a second. And Miss Ventura ended up paying Miss Morgan additional funds in an attempt to resolve the dispute between her close friend and her abusive and controlling boyfriend. The relationship between Miss Ventura and Miss Morgan has been strained since this time. Seeing the extreme measures Mr. Combs took to keep a tight hold on Miss Ventura and isolate her from her support network, and having experienced the repercussions of rejecting his demands, Miss Ventura felt that saying no to Mr. Combs would cost her something: her family, her friends, her career, or even her life. And it's about to get worse. And I realized that the banner is wrong. Okay. Mr. Combs rapes Miss Ventura. By 2017 and 2018, Miss Ventura became desperate to leave Mr. Combs and his abuse of her. She recognized that if she stayed with him, she would never be able to have a successful career or ever be physically and mentally safe. She therefore became determined to completely break away from Mr. Combs and his cycle of abuse and made concerted efforts to avoid him. In September of 2018, she joined Mr. Combs for a dinner at an Italian restaurant in Malibu, California, for what she believed would be a discussion about concluding their relationship for good. After dinner, Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura returned to Miss Ventura's home, which was paid for by Mr. Combs. Mr. Combs forced himself into her apartment and tried to kiss Miss Ventura. She told him to stop and attempted to push him away. Mr. Combs then forcibly pulled off Miss Ventura's clothing and unbuckled his belt. He proceeded to rape Miss Ventura while she repeatedly said no and tried to push him away. Soon thereafter, Miss Ventura took steps to completely separate herself from her longtime abuser, including by leaving the home that he paid for and returning the car he purchased for her. Despite moving away, Miss Ventura's address was posted online in early 2019, leading to fears for her safety. Fuck that person. Miss Ventura, who was under immense duress during the months after Mr. Combs raped her, took all steps possible to entirely remove herself from her abuser's ambit, including by entering into contracts to end her record deal with Bad Boy Entertainment. Mr. Combs' sexual and physical abuse of Miss Ventura has caused her lifelong harm. As a result of the immense trauma Miss Ventura endured for over a decade with Mr. Combs, she has suffered and continues to suffer from immense emotional distress. Following her escape from the cycle of abuse and sex trafficking she endured, she struggled with the physical and mental manifestations of her trauma. The birth of her 2 children, however, allowed her a new lease on life and gave her purpose. She credits her children with saving her from the trauma that had consumed over a decade of her life. Except for the months when she was pregnant with her children, Miss Ventura struggled with her addictions to drugs and alcohol, addictions that were established and fueled by Mr. Combs. She turned to substances to drown out the memories of her abuse. Without being intoxicated, she suffered from horrific nightmares of the forced sexual acts that Mr. Combs demanded she participate in during the regularly scheduled FOs and of the physical beatings that she endured throughout her relationship. She had difficulty eating or sleeping, and her relationships with her family suffered. During this time, she frequently had thoughts of ending her life. To rebuild her life and her career, Miss Ventura needed to completely reinvent herself. She checked herself into inpatient treatment at a rehabilitation center, where she first confronted the extent of the trauma she lives with. She has required intensive therapy and other medical care to recover from Mr. Combs' abuse, and she will forever live with the physical and psychological repercussions of the over a decade of violence, fear, and exploitation she endured. Although Miss Ventura was unable to speak up against the years of abuse that she endured at the hands of Mr. Combs, she has since been able to rebuild her life and confront her trauma. Thanks to the passage of New York's Adult Survivors Act and California's Sexual Abuse Accountability and Cover-Up Act, she is now ready and able to also confront her abuser. and to hold him and those who enabled his abuse accountable for their actions. First cause of action. Plaintiff repeats and realleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. Plaintiff is a victim of sex trafficking within the meaning of 18 U.S. Code 1591 A and B, and therefore entitled to bring a civil action. The defendant's acts and omission, taken separately and or together, as outlined above, constitute a violation of 18 U.S.C. 1595. Specifically, defendant Sean Combs perpetrated sex trafficking of Ms. Ventura by requiring her to engage in forced sexual acts in multiple jurisdictions, and all defendants benefited from Mr. Combs' venture by holding Ms. Ventura, an artist signed with defendant Bad Boy Records, and otherwise employed by other defendant Doe corporations, captive to Mr. Combs' demands and desires. At all relevant times, defendants participated in and facilitated the harboring and transportation of plaintiff for purposes of sex induced by force, fraud, or coercion. The defendant, I think they should give him baby oil to drink, and that's it. That's all he gets. The defendant corporations have financially and otherwise benefited as a result of these acts and omissions by keeping Mr. Combs, the volatile and explosive owner of the defendant corporation, satisfied. They benefited from facilitating his behavior to the extent it kept the mercurial music mogul happy and kept Miss Ventura obedient to Mr. Combs and the corporation's interests. Defendant Combs and defendants Bad Boy Records, Bad Boy Entertainment, and Doe corporations 1 through 10 formed a venture as defined by 18 U.S. Code 1591, given that they constituted a, quote, group of two or more individuals associated in fact, whether or not a legal activity. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's unlawful conduct as alleged herein above, plaintiff has suffered physical injury, severe emotional distress, and anxiety, humiliation, embarrassment, post-traumatic stress disorder, economic harm, and other consequential damages. Plaintiff also seeks reasonable attorney's fees as provided under 18 U.S.C. 1595A. Second cause, violation of the New York Services for Victims of Human Trafficking. Against all defendants. Did I miss that before? Against all defendants. Yes. Think about it. If it is listed as, I can't remember if it's listed at the top as a defendant, so we'll see. It might be. All right. Plaintiff repeats and realleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. Plaintiff is a victim of sex trafficking and is therefore entitled to bring a civil action. Again, it's not that I don't care about the laws and the codes and things. I'm going to try and weave my way around them. The defendant's acts and omissions taken separately and or together as outlined above constitute a violation. Specifically, defendant Sean Combs perpetrated sex trafficking of Miss Ventura by requiring her to engage in forced sexual acts in the state of New York. And all defendants benefited from Mr. Combs' venture by holding Miss Ventura, an artist signed with defendant Bad Boy Records and otherwise employed by other defendant Doe corporations, captive to Mr. Combs' demands and desires. At all relevant times, defendants participated in and facilitated the harboring and transportation of plaintiff for purposes of sex induced by force, fraud, or coercion. The defendant corporations have financially and otherwise benefited as a result of these acts and omissions by keeping Mr. Combs, the volatile and explosive owner of defendant corporations, satisfied. They benefited from facilitating his behavior to the extent it kept the mercurial music mogul happy and kept Miss Ventura obedient to Mr. Combs and the corporation's interests. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's unlawful conduct, as he alleged here and above, plaintiff has suffered physical injury, severe emotional distress and anxiety, humiliation, embarrassment, post-traumatic stress disorder, economic harm, and other consequential damages. Plaintiff also seeks reasonable attorney's fees. Third cause of action, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. This is the same language, direct attorney's fees. Okay. Fourth cause of action, sexual battery under New York law. Plaintiff repeats and realleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. In performing and conducting in performing the conduct described above, defendant committed a battery against plaintiff because he intentionally engaged in unlawful, intentional, and offensive touching or application of force to plaintiff's person. Defendant's actions amount to violations as well as an analogous California law and the common law of New York and California. As a result of Mr. Combs' alleged conduct, plaintiff has suffered physical injury, severe emotional distress, humiliation, embarrassment, anxiety, economic harm, and other consequential damages. The conduct of Mr. Combs, described above, was willful, wanton, and malicious. At all relevant times, Mr. Combs acted with conscious disregard of plaintiff's rights and feelings, acted with the knowledge of, or with reckless disregard for, the fact that his conduct was certain to cause injury and or humiliation to plaintiff and intended to cause fear, physical injury, and or pain and suffering to plaintiff. By virtue of the foregoing, plaintiff is entitled to recover punitive and exemplary damages from Mr. Combs according to proof at trial. This action is timely because it falls within and is brought during the 1-year time period set forth in that section. The claims brought herein allege intentional and negligent acts and or omissions for physical, psychological, and other injuries suffered as a result of conduct that would constitute sexual offenses as defined in Article 130 of the New York Penal Law, and such acts and or omissions were committed against Ms. Ventura when she was over 18 years of age. The action also falls within California's adult sexual abuse law and is brought during the 3-year time period set forth in that action. Fifth cause of action, sexual assault pursuant to the California Sexual Abuse and Cover-Up Accountability Act. Plaintiff repeats and realleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. Defendant Mr. Combs subjected plaintiff to sexual abuse, sexual battery, rape, and forcible act of sexual penetration as defined. In doing so, he intended to and did cause harmful and sexually offensive contact with their person and place them in imminent apprehension of such contact. Defendant corporations were entities engaged in a cover-up, as defined in California Civil Code. Because defendant corporations took concerted efforts to hide evidence relating to the above described sexual assaults that incentivized individuals to remain silent or prevented information relating to the sexual assaults from becoming public. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's unlawful conduct, as alleged here and above, plaintiff has suffered physical injury, severe emotional distress and anxiety, humiliation, embarrassment, post-traumatic stress disorder, economic harm, and other consequential damages. Sixth cause, violation of the Victims of Gender-Motivated Violence Act. Plaintiff repeats and realleges. The above described conduct of defendant Mr. Combs, including but not limited to Mr. Combs' repeated physical and sexual assaults of plaintiff in New York City, constitutes a crime of violence and a crime of violence motivated by gender against plaintiff as defined by the New York City VGM VPL. The above described conduct of defendant Mr. Combs, including but not limited to Mr. Combs' repeated physical and sexual assaults of plaintiff in New York City, constitutes a crime of violence against plaintiff and is a crime of violence motivated by gender as defined. The term crime of violence means an act or series of acts that would constitute a misdemeanor or felony against the person as defined in state or federal law, or that would constitute a misdemeanor or felony against property as defined in state or federal law if the conduct presents a serious risk of physical injury to another, whether or not those acts have actually resulted in criminal charges, prosecution, or conviction. And the term crime of violence motivated by gender means a crime of violence committed because of gender or on the basis of gender and due, at least in part, to an animus based on the victim's gender. Defendant corporations enabled Mr. Combs' commission of the crime of violence motivated by gender and are therefore also liable under the VGM VPL. As a direct and proximate result of the aforementioned crime of violence and gender-motivated violence, plaintiff has sustained and will continue to sustain monetary damages, physical injury, pain and suffering, and serious psychological and emotional distress, entitling her to an award of compensatory and punitive damages, injunctive and declaratory relief, attorney's fees and costs, and other remedies as this court may deem appropriate damages. The above described conduct of defendant Mr. Combs constitutes a sexual offense. Pursuant to this cause of action is timely because it's commenced within 2 years and 6 months after September 1st, 2022. Seventh cause is sexual harassment, gender discrimination, and hostile work environment. Plaintiff repeats and realleges. Defendants discriminated against plaintiff on the basis of her gender in violation of the NYS HRL by subjecting plaintiff to disparate treatment based upon her gender, including but not limited to subjecting her to sexual assault and or harassment, rape, and hostile work environment. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's unlawful discriminatory conduct in violation, plaintiff has suffered and continues to suffer monetary and or economic harm for which she is entitled to an award of monetary damages and other relief. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's unlawful discriminatory conduct in violation, plaintiff has suffered and continues to suffer severe mental anguish and emotional distress for which she is entitled to an award of monetary damages and other relief. Defendants' unlawful and discriminatory actions were intentional, done with malice, and or showed a deliberate, willful, wanton, and reckless indifference to plaintiff's rights under the NYS HRL, for which plaintiff is entitled to an award of punitive damages. This action is timely because it falls within and is brought during the 1-year time period set forth in that section. The claims brought herein allege intentional and negligent acts and or omissions for physical, psychological, and other injury suffered as a result of conduct that would constitute sexual offenses as defined in Article 130 of the New York Penal Law. And such acts and or omissions were committed against Miss Ventura when she was over 18 years of age. Eighth cause of action. This is sexual harassment, gender discrimination, hostile work environment under New York City. This is the same language. Prayer for relief. Wherefore, plaintiff prays judgment to be entered in her favor. I've never heard of a prayer for relief. Wherefore, plaintiff prays judgment be entered in her favor against defendants, and each of them as follows. 1. For a money judgment representing compensatory damages, including consequential damages, lost wages, earning, and all other sums of money, together with interest on these amounts according to proof. 2. For a money judgment for mental pain and anguish and severe emotional distress according to proof. 3. For punitive and exemplary damages according to proof. 4. For attorney's fees and costs. 5. For prejudgment and postjudgment interest. And 6. For such other and further relief as the court may deem just and proper. Dated November 16th, 2023, New York, New York. Respectfully submitted, Wigdor LLP. Good gracious. That's unbearable. As I mentioned before, a new complaint has been put forth against Dids. He deserves all of it. Hold on. Let me see if I can get that answer regarding Sony. So in Thalia's case, it has I don't see Sony in Thalia's case. I don't see Sony in, unless Sony is counted. Unless Sony is counted in the Doe corporations 1 through 10. Yeah. Are you talking about Thalia? Because it was just yesterday. Unless I got my info wrong. I mean, it's even dated yesterday. Okay, so this is Thalia Graves. This is literally the Cassie one. Well, I have not even gone through this at all. So, here we go. This is a complaint and demand for a jury trial. Plaintiff Thalia Graves, and by and through her attorneys, Allred, Morocco, and Goldberg, and I'm guessing it's Cutie Hecker Wang LLP, which is quite a name. For her complaint alleges as follows. Someone else's mentor, maybe. I mean, that would have been a smart move like a decade, 2 decades ago. Money talks, like I said. I'm telling you, this show is going to make me run out of wine. All right. Introduction. In or around the summer of 2001, plaintiff's life was violently knocked off course when defendant Sean Combs and Joseph Sherman, Joseph Sherman's the one who runs Bad Boy, viciously raped her at Bad Boy Records studio in New York City. Plaintiff was 25 at the time and dating one of Combs' employees, a relationship that Combs exploited to lure plaintiff into meeting him and Sherman alone. Once they successfully sequestered plaintiff, Combs and Sherman gave plaintiff a drink, likely laced with a drug that eventually caused her to briefly lose consciousness. She awoke to find herself bound and restrained. Combs and Sherman proceeded to brutally sexually abuse and violate plaintiff. Combs mercilessly raped her anally and vaginally. Sherman forcefully slammed plaintiff onto a table, slapped her, and repeatedly thrust. Repeated. I'm going to be an adult here. Repeatedly thrust his penis into her mouth. Both men were undeterred by plaintiff's cries for help throughout the attack. Plaintiff never recovered from defendant's violent rape. She had suicidal thoughts and ideation and has received extensive psychological treatment because of defendant's attack. For decades, she remained silent and did not report the crime out of fear that defendants would use their power to ruin her life, as they had repeatedly, explicitly threatened to do. To this day, plaintiff suffers from severe depression, anxiety, and panic attacks and still lives in fear of defendants. Yep. Any progress plaintiff had made in healing from the attack over the years was dramatically reversed on or around November 27th, 2023, when she learned for the first time that Combs and Sherman had video recorded the horrific rape 22 years before and had shown the video to multiple men, seeking to publicly degrade and humiliate both plaintiff and her boyfriend. Plaintiff could not believe that defendants would record themselves committing such a gruesome crime, and then proceeded proudly and widely to disseminate the recording of it. She was distraught and sunk into a deep depression. She again considered ending her life. This action seeks redress for defendants' brutalizing, misogynistic, and violent attacks on plaintiffs starting in 2001 with their rape and continuing in the subsequent years as they compounded her humiliation by showing the video of the sexual assault to others. Parties. Plaintiff Thalia Graves is a female who resides in Harris County, Texas. Defendant Sean Combs is a male who, on information and belief, resides in Los Angeles. Yeah, he is. He's also mentioned in an Eminem song that Eminem calls him out. Let me see if I can find it. Where is it? All right. The lyrics in question. I'm an RAPER. Got so many essays, huh? Wait, he didn't just spell the word rapper and leave out a P, did he? That's clever. And it's his clever way of telling us, yo. Defendant Sean Combs is a male who, on information and belief, resides in Los Angeles County, California, though at the time of filing was incarcerated in the Metropolitan... I love the fact that they put this. At the time of filing, was incarcerated in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. On information and belief, at all relevant times, Combs owned and or controlled Bad Boy Entertainment Holdings. Bad Boy Productions Holdings Incorporated, Bad Boy Books Holdings Incorporated, Bad Boy Records LLC, Bad Boy Entertainment LLC, Bad Boy Productions LLC, collectively known as Bad Boy, Daddy's House Recording Studio Incorporated, gross, CE Opco LLC, DBA Combs Global, FKA Combs Enterprises LLC, altogether the Combs Corporations. The facts of Combs' ownership and titles at the Combs Corporations enabled him to commit the unlawful sexual violence against plaintiff described herein and or to harass and subsequently intimidate her into silence after the rape. Defendant Joseph Sherman, a.k.a., quote, Big Joe. He sounds like a very, very small man. Is a male who, on information and belief, resides in Westchester County, New York. Arrest him. On information and belief, Sherman was employed by Combs and or by the Combs Corporations during the relevant period. The facts of Combs' ownership and titles and Sherman's titles at the Combs Corporations enabled Sherman to commit the unlawful sexual violence against plaintiff described herein and or to harass and subsequently intimidate her into silence after the rape. Defendant Daddy's House Recordings Incorporated, hereforth known as Daddy's House, is a domestic business corporation that is incorporated in New York and on... He is indeed correct. Domestic business corporation that is incorporated in New York and on information and belief now has its principal place of business at 9255 Sunset Boulevard, second floor, West Hollywood, California, 969. Combs is listed as the CEO in public filings with a listed address of 1710 Broadway, New York, 10019. At the time of the events alleged herein, Daddy's House was a world-class recording studio owned by Combs, located at 321 West 44th Street, Suite 201, New York, 10036. On information and belief, at all relevant times, Bad Boy and Combs together owned and operated Daddy's House. On information, not my daddy's house. On information and belief, the Bad Boy recording studio was located on the premises of Daddy's House. Combs and Sherman used the Daddy's House premises and their ownership and titles at Daddy's House to commit the unlawful sexual violence against plaintiff described herein and or to harass and subsequently intimidate her into silence after the rape. Defendant CE Opco LLC, DBA Combs Global, FKA Combs Enterprises LLC, is a limited liability corporation incorporated in Delaware that has its principal place of business at 9255 Sunset Boulevard, second floor, West Hollywood, California, 969. That's also very true. He is. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. On information and belief, all members of Combs Global are citizens of Delaware, New York, and or California. On information and belief, Combs Global is an alter ego for Combs and or a successor in interest to Combs' other corporations and or was established or used by Combs for the purpose of moving, disposing of, and or insulting his assets, including in connection with insulating his assets, including in connection with his criminal activities and to avoid liability. Combs Global currently owns, controls, and or oversees Bad Boy and Combs' other business ventures in the music, fashion, fragrance, beverage, marketing, film, television, and media industries. Excuse me if I never take another drink from anything. I've never taken a drink from anything that he owns. As part of his renowned Bad Boy record label and brand, Combs has established several corporate entities under the Bad Boy name over the past few decades, including but not limited to Bad Boy Entertainment Holdings Incorporated, Bad Boy Productions Holdings Incorporated, Bad Boy Books Holdings Incorporated. What books? Bad Boy Records LLC, Bad Boy Entertainment LLC, and Bad Boy Productions LLC. You already said together Bad Boy. We need to just say Bad Boy from here on. On information and belief, all Bad Boy, there it is, corporate entities are alter egos for Combs and are controlled and or directed by Combs and or were established or used by Combs for the purpose of moving, disposing of, and or insulating his assets, including in connection with his criminal activities and to avoid liability. On information and belief, all active Bad Boy entities are now owned and or controlled by Combs and or by Combs Global. Combs and Sherman used the Bad Boy premises recording studio and their ownership and titles at Bad Boy to commit the unlawful sexual violence against plaintiff described herein and or to harass and subsequently intimidate her into silence after the rape. Defendant Bad Boy Entertainment Holdings Incorporated is a domestic business corporation incorporated in New York, and on information and belief now has its principal place of business at 9255 Sunset Boulevard, 2nd floor, West Hollywood, California, 969. Bad Boy Entertainment Holdings is part of the Bad Boy Enterprise, founded and owned by Combs, and on information and belief is now owned and or controlled by Combs and or by Combs Global. Combs is listed as the CEO in public filings with a listed address of 1710 Broadway, New York, New York, 119. Defendant Bad Boy Productions Holdings. All right, these are addresses. These are addresses. They're naming all of this liability. All right. Defendants' organizational does 1 through 10 are currently unknown entities who were owned by and or employed defendants Combs and or Sherman and enabled the commission of the conduct complained of herein. As the parties engage in discovery, plaintiff retains the right to amend the complaint to add these entities by name. Each of the Combs corporations, A, aided and abetted Combs and Sherman in committing the unlawful sexual violence against plaintiff described herein, and or in harassing and subsequently intimidating her into silence after the rape. B, provided Combs and Sherman with the studio office space where they committed the rape and or with hold on. What the heck is that? A catch-all category of property associated with movable goods. Okay. Including recording equipment, storage equipment, etc., to record the rape and disseminate it. C are alter egos for Combs, completely dominated by him and used for his personal interests and to engage in wrongdoing, which harmed plaintiff and others, and or D, serve or have served as vehicles for Combs to move, dispose of, and or insulate his assets, including in connection with his criminal activities, and to avoid compensating the victims of his many crimes, including the plaintiff. Jurisdiction and venue. This court has subject matter jurisdiction pursuant to 28 U.S. Code 1332 because this case is between citizens of different states and the amount in controversy exceeds $75,000. This court has specific personal jurisdiction over defendants because the acts giving rise to plaintiff's claims took place in New York State, and because several of the defendants are domiciled in New York State and or regularly transact business in New York State. Venue is proper in this district pursuant to 28 U.S. Code 1391B because a substantial part of the events or admissions giving rise to the claims occurred in this district. Jury demand. Plaintiff hereby demands a trial by jury on her claims in this action. Here, get ready. Factual allegations. Background. Plaintiff's family immigrated to New York City when plaintiff was a teenager in connection with her mother's work. Her family ultimately settled in Rego Park, Queens, where she completed her education and where she was living when she met Combs. Defendant Combs, also known by his stage names Puff Daddy, Puffy, P. Diddy, Diddy, Brother Love, or Love, that's new, is a prominent rapper, record executive, and businessman. He rose to fame in the 1990s with his record label Bad Boy and continued to be a notable figure in the music and entertainment industry in the following years. Combs has continued to amass wealth and power through his business ventures in the music, fashion, fragrance, beverage, marketing, film, television, and media industries. The Bad Boy Enterprise is the foundation of Combs' wealth and power. Bad Boy has sold over 500 million records through its lucrative distribution deals with the top music companies in the world and has signed acclaimed hip-hop and R&B artists. I feel like I'm on like an episode of MTV's Cribs. The Bad Boy Enterprise is the foundation of Combs' wealth and power. They've signed acclaimed hip-hop and R&B artists, including the Notorious B.I.G., Mary J. Blige, and Usher. Combs later founded CE Opco LLC, aka Combs Enterprises, later rebranded as Combs Global, to serve as a home for his portfolio of businesses, including his investments in the music, fashion, fragrance, beverage, marketing, film, television, and media industries. On information and belief, Combs Global houses Bad Boy and other notable businesses such as Combs' fashion line, Sean John, his vodka line, Ciroc, and his cable media company, Revolt Media. You know what? I don't think I knew that was his vodka line. And I totally forgot about his fashion line. Not that I own any of it. That would be a crime in and of itself. As detailed below, Combs has a long history of violence and of abusing and raping women, and there have been several civil lawsuits filed against Combs in the past year alleging sexual violence and abuse. On September 16th, 2024, Combs was arrested and charged with racketeering and sex trafficking. He was denied bail. Defendant Sherman, also known as Big Joe, was employed by Combs. Oh, did he lose it? He lost it? Well, that's good. All of it. Lose it. Get rid of it. Well, correction. Sell it and then give that money to the victims. Oh, he wasn't the owner. Whatever. He was the bodyguard. Bodyguard and head of security during the relevant time period described herein and served in various roles in the Combs corporations. Maybe he is. Sherman is also the founder of Rhymes and Dimes Magazine Incorporated in the Combs corporations. Actually, I'm really interested in seeing if there's anybody else that is directly named in this. So we'll see. Oh yeah, Fitty's fitting to do a documentary that's just or a movie about this that's just been bought by Netflix. Let's see here. Sorry. A New York state registered corporation and through right here or connection with that company produces and what? Come again? Well, let's try this again. Sherman is also the founder of Rhymes and Dimes Magazine Incorporated, a New York state registered corporation, and through or in connection with that company produces and distributes pornography. On information and I'm not. Sorry, I didn't. I don't know. On information and belief, he has often distributed videos of his and or his friends' sexual assaults through his pornography company. Hold on. What? How is that? You know what? I am not a prude, but I don't think that enters into this at this point. How? How did this? You know, I'm asking questions that I really don't want to know the answers to. Plaintiff met defendant Combs in or around late 1999 or early 2000 through her then boyfriend, who was an executive at Bad Boy. In addition, yep, sounds like it. It sounds like Big Boy sold it through his business? In addition to working together, plaintiff's boyfriend and Combs had a close personal relationship. Plaintiff frequently visited her boyfriend at the Bad Boy studio in New York City and attended events hosted at Combs' residences. Over time, plaintiff became familiar with Combs, and he knew about her relationship with her boyfriend. Defendants trick, drug, and violently rape plaintiff. In or around the summer of 2001, plaintiff received a call from Combs concerning her boyfriend's employment at Bad Boy. He told her he wanted to meet with her in person to discuss her boyfriend's supposed performance issues. Her boyfriend was determined to climb up the ladder at Combs' records label, and as his romantic partner, plaintiff was committed to helping him. Plaintiff agreed to meet with Combs. In retrospect, it was evidently a sick and twisted way of using his ownership of and title at Bad Boy and its affiliate entities to abuse plaintiff and also show his power and ability to humiliate her boyfriend, his executive. A few hours later, Combs arrived at plaintiff mother's residence in Queens with Sherman, who was employed by Combs as his bodyguard at the time. Sherman was driving an SUV, and Combs was in the back seat. After plaintiff entered the vehicle, Combs offered her a glass of wine, which she accepted. Combs began discussing his alleged concerns about her boyfriend's performance at work. Meanwhile, as plaintiff drank what had been handed to her, she started to feel lightheaded, dizzy, and physically weak. In retrospect, it is clear that Combs had caused a drug to be put into plaintiff's drink, as a few sips of wine had never impacted her that way. Combs and Sherman drove plaintiff to the Bad Boy studio in Manhattan. When they arrived and plaintiff tried to get out of the car, she realized that she was feeling odd and found it difficult to walk. She assumed this was her fault and did her best to act normal and followed Combs as he led her eventually to a couch in a private room in the Bad Boy studio. She later came to understand this was Combs' personal lounge and office at the Bad Boy studio. Combs sat on the couch next to plaintiff and continued speaking to her. Plaintiff began feeling even more woozy and sedated. She then lost consciousness. When plaintiff regained consciousness, she was naked, and her hands were tied behind her back with what felt like a plastic grocery bag. Plaintiff shouted for help. In response, Sherman lifted her up from the couch and forcibly slammed her face down on what was apparently a pool table. Shortly thereafter, Combs entered the room naked. All right. Combs reached for a container of lubricant that smelled like menthol and proceeded to apply it. He then bent plaintiff over the table, causing her feet to dangle above the floor, forcibly held her down, and anally penetrated her without her consent. Plaintiff is 4 feet 11 inches tall and weighed only 103 pounds at the time. Plaintiff was unable to move, totally overpowered physically, in addition to being drugged and bound. Plaintiff screamed out in pain, but Combs continued to violently rape her. He easily physically overpowered her, smashing her head down on the pool table while she futilely tried to wriggle out from under him. During the brutal attack, plaintiff vomited into her mouth and on the table. At one point, she involuntarily... Combs was undeterred. He wiped himself off, applied more lubricant, and without any acknowledgement of plaintiff's distress, proceeded to then penetrate plaintiff. Y'all, I'm going to really try to kind of work my way around some of this. I mean, F the site for if they take this down, but I got to be careful. Not that these facts are not important, by the way, but they're also on the screen. So, plaintiff experienced intense pain and burning sensations. Plaintiff continued to scream for help because of the extreme pain she felt as Combs penetrated her over and over. She then lost consciousness again. The next time she regained consciousness, plaintiff was on the couch and Sherman was standing in front of her with his penis in her face. Sherman slapped plaintiff in the face and forcibly inserted into her mouth. Sherman slapped her yet again and continued to thrust. Plaintiff once again lost consciousness. When she next awoke, plaintiff was on the couch naked and alone in the room. Plaintiff was in severe pain and distress. Everything burned. Her face and wrists were bruised, and her genital area smelled strongly of menthol. She felt a liquid dripping. Her dress was thrown over her, her purse was on the couch next to her, and her bra was on the floor nearby. Terrified that Combs and Sherman would return, plaintiff quickly got dressed and bolted out of the studio. Still dizzy and weak, plaintiff called a livery driver that her family regularly hired and knew well. The driver picked her up from outside Bad Boy Studio. She was disheveled, crying uncontrollably, and suffering from agonizing pain. The driver drove her to the hospital and tried to convince her to report the rape and get a rape kit, but she was unable to leave the car, shaking and crying hysterically, and terrified of what Combs would do to her and her family if she reported him. The aftermath and impact. Plaintiff sustained serious physical injuries in the aftermath of the rape. As noted, she had burning, bruising on her wrists and face. In the days after the assault, she suffered bleeding and hemorrhoids. Because of Combs' power and notoriety, plaintiff was afraid to report what had happened. She was involved in a contentious divorce and custody battle at the time and feared that reporting the rape would cause her to lose custody of her young child. Can I just say that if reporting a crime committed against... Now, by the way, I don't have rose-colored glasses. I know that people are assholes. That should not, in any way, shape, or form, cause her to lose custody. You shouldn't. However, that's not me saying that her thoughts were not valid. They were very valid because the justice system's weird. And by that I mean sometimes really stupid. Plaintiff confided in her boyfriend Combs' employee, hoping he would comfort and support her. But instead of supporting her, he discouraged her from disclosing the assault. What the hell? Telling her that it could negatively impact his own career. I just had to swallow that one. Following the assault and multiple times over the years, both Combs and Sherman contacted plaintiff and warned her to be silent, threatening repercussions, including plaintiff potentially losing custody of her son if she ever disclosed the assault. Because of their enormous power in the industry, including through their ownership of and positions at the Combs Corporation, plaintiff knew that they could follow through on their threats. Plaintiff told close, sad excuse of a boyfriend, indeed. Indeed. I wish he was named in here. I really do. Maybe he is. Plaintiff told close friends that Combs and Sherman had drugged and savagely raped her, but as noted, was afraid to report the attack to the police out of fear that the defendants would follow through on their threats. She was even afraid to stay in New York City while Combs lived there. So with the help of a friend, she fled to Pennsylvania. Plaintiff has in fact relocated multiple times throughout the years in an effort to stay away from Combs. Plaintiff has suffered irreparable harm because of the brutal rape by defendants Combs and Sherman. She suffers from severe depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. She also has suffered suicidal ideation and intrusive thoughts, and has attempted to end her life. Plaintiff lives in constant fear. She struggles with hypervigilance and experiences anxiety and panic attacks in social settings, preferring to be alone. Her need to hide to feel safe has strained her relationships with friends and family. Defendant's rape has also impacted plaintiff's ability to engage in sexual acts with her intimate partners. To this day, she cannot be in certain sexual positions without experiencing flashbacks of Combs violently penetrating her from behind. On or around November 27th, 2023, all the trauma of the rape came flooding back to plaintiff when her former boyfriend revealed to her for the first time, that Combs and Sherman had recorded and published the video. Earlier that month, Cassie Ventura had come forward and filed a lawsuit against Combs for subjecting her to years of severe sexual and physical abuse. The case had been settled one day after it had been filed. Yes. Plaintiff's former boyfriend invoked Miss Ventura's effort to hold Combs accountable and for the first time confessed that years earlier, but sometime after the actual rape itself, Sherman and Combs had showed him and a group of men, some of whom were also employed by Combs' companies and or their related entities, the video of plaintiff being raped. He disclosed that Combs and Sherman had a pattern and practice of non-consensually recording women engaging in sexual acts and making those videos available to the public, including by selling tapes as pornography. A bad boy artist later corroborated in a text message that Sherman, quote, used to sell porn of him doing this to chicks, and that Sherman, quote, did that to a lot of women. Plaintiff's former boyfriend reported that he and the other men watched the recording of plaintiff's rape on a handheld camera while at the Bad Boy studio in New York City. Combs, Sherman, and some of the other men made derogatory comments about the former boyfriend's relationship with plaintiff in an attempt to shame him into cutting ties with plaintiff and to cause her further emotional harm and embarrassment. Jesus Christ. On information and belief, defendants continued to show the video of the rape to others over the years and through to the present and or sold the video as pornography. Plaintiff was shocked and horrified that Combs and Sherman had recorded and publicized the video of them raping her. After over 2 decades spent trying to heal and distance herself from the experience, plaintiff was devastated by the news. She felt as if her life had been turned upside down again, and like the rape had been happening again and again, even as she was trying to forget it. She experienced acute psychological distress, plunging into a deep depression and having suicidal ideations. She felt intense fear, anger, and anxiety. Plaintiff lives with the distress of knowing that the video of her brutal rape is in circulation and that anyone, including her family, friends, and peers, could view it at any time. In panic, she reached out to Sherman after learning about the tape, hoping to protect herself from further humiliation by convincing him to destroy the tape or provide it to her, but he did not respond. Combs has a long history of violence and abuse. This long-standing behavior has been enabled by his ownership of and titles at the Combs Corporations and their affiliated entities, and the immense wealth and power he has amassed through such business dealings. Among a long list of allegations, in 1996, he was found guilty of criminal mischief for threatening a photographer from the New York Post with a gun. In 1999, he was arrested and charged with second-degree assault and criminal mischief in connection with the beating of a record executive, and arrested again the same year in relation to a shooting at a club in New York. That female victim has consistently stated that Combs shot her in the face at point-blank range. Combs also has a pattern and practice of using his power and influence in music and entertainment industries to submit people to sexual violence, often drugging his victims and or coercing them to consume drugs and recording the assaults, often without the victim's knowledge, just as he did with the plaintiff. In the past year, a number of these people have come forward to accuse Combs of sexual assault, violent rapes, and or sex trafficking. In November 2023, 3 lawsuits were filed against Combs under the New York Adult Survivors Act. As noted above, Cassie Ventura, an artist signed Bad Boy, sued Combs in the Southern District of New York for rape and years-long physical abuse, facilitated in part by Combs, having supplied Miss Ventura with copious amounts of drugs and urging her to take them, beginning in 2006. Combs regularly recorded Miss Ventura engaging in sex acts he forced her to engage in. Joy Dickerson Neal, who had appeared with Combs in a music video, sued Combs in New York County Supreme Court, alleging Combs drugged her, sexually assaulted her, and secretly recorded the assault in 1991. Liza Gardner, whom Combs met at an event hosted by a record label affiliated with Bad Boy, sued him for raping her and a friend in 1990 or 91 when she was only 16. God, he should be in prison forever already. In December 2023, an anonymous plaintiff sued Combs in the Southern District of New York for drugging and gang raping her in 2003 when she was only 17. That complaint alleges that Combs and one of his business associates and employees lured the plaintiff to Daddy's house through their affiliations with the Bad Boy Enterprise and its related entities and raped her at the same location where the plaintiff was raped. In February of 2024, Rodney Little Rod Jones, one of Combs' former producers, sued Combs for forcing him to engage in unwanted sex acts and sex trafficking, among other allegations. In that complaint, Mr. Jones alleges that Combs regularly drugged others, including minors, by giving them alcoholic beverages laced with ecstasy and other date rape drugs, that he believes he himself was drugged by Combs, and that Combs routinely secretly recorded sexual encounters. In May of 2024, 2 more women sued Combs. Former model Crystal McKinney sued Combs in the Southern District of New York for drugging and sexually assaulting her at his recording studio in 2003. Combs had promised to help advance Miss McKinney's modeling career, a promise she believed he would fulfill because of his ownership of and or titles at the Bad Boy Enterprise and its related entities. April Lampros, an intern at Arista Records, which was an owner of Bad Boy, also sued Combs in May 2024 in New York County Supreme Court for raping her on multiple occasions, secretly filming at least one of the assaults and showing the recording to multiple people. Miss Lampros alleges that Combs ordered her to take drugs on one occasion before he raped her. In July of 2024, former adult film star Adria English, who was employed by Combs as an entertainer at his infamous white parties that brought together the biggest names in the music and entertainment industries, sued Combs in the Southern District of New York for sex trafficking, alleging that he required her to consume drinks laced with ecstasy and secretly recorded the sexual acts he forced her to engage in. In September 2024, singer and songwriter Dawn Angelique Richard also sued Combs. Richard was employed by Combs as part of the girl group Danity Kane, formed by Combs, and later as a key member of Combs' band Diddy, Dirty Money. She sued Combs in the Southern District of New York for sexual assault, false imprisonment, and for subjecting her to hostile working conditions due to her gender, including degrading comments and threats. Miss Richard has alleged that Combs regularly supplied others, including minors, with copious amounts of drugs and alcohol, and subjected them to sexual acts while they were sedated and or unconscious due to the drugs and alcohol. This is interesting. There was a notable smell of menthol. I'm trying to take a look real quick. One second. Sorry, everybody, taking a look. Doesn't have a smell. Doesn't have a smell. You can't smell or taste it. There's something. That might be something. That combination. Okay. On September 16th, 2024, Combs was arrested at a Manhattan hotel after a grand jury indicted him on charges of sex trafficking and racketeering. The indictment details how for decades, quote, 4 decades, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. See United States of America v. Sean Combs. It notes that Combs' abuse of women was enabled by the employees, resources, and influences of the multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The indictment notes that Combs' business was operated at various times in both Manhattan and Los Angeles, quote, under a variety of United States-based corporate entities, including the Combs business. According to the indictment, quote, physical abuse by Combs was recurrent and widely known. It notes that Combs' assaults on women include, quote, striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. Combs was also charged with, quote, using the Combs business, including certain employees, to carry out, facilitate, and cover up his abuse and commercial sex. And the indictment notes that his employees' conduct was facilitated and assisted by Combs' control of the Combs business. The indictment specifically refers to the involvement of Combs' security staff, likely referring to Sherman. It notes that Combs and his affiliates recorded sexual assaults and controlled victims through the use of drugs. In or about March 2024, law enforcement seized narcotics and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant from Combs' residence. That also includes 2 broken down automatic weapons and a barrel thing. Combs' long history of violence against women makes unmistakably clear that his actions, including his attack on plaintiff, have been motivated by gender. Specifically, he has a profound contempt for women and an ongoing practice of denigrating and trying to humiliate them. Combs' treatment of plaintiff accords with his pattern and practices of drugging, raping, and secretly recording the women he is abusing. First cause of action. Plaintiff hereby incorporates each of the foregoing paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. But yes, the serial numbers were scrubbed off. Basically, there's like a hole where the serial number was. By viciously and violently forcing sexual contact, oral sex, anal sex, and sexual intercourse on plaintiff, defendants Combs and Sherman committed a crime of violence motivated by gender under the VGM VPA as defined by the New York Administrative Code. The requirement that the crime of violence be committed because of gender, we've gone through this. Gender animus inheres when consent is absent. Moreover, Combs' long history of violence against women evinces a deep contempt for women, as does Sherman's alleged pattern of committing his own sexual assaults, recording them and selling them as pornography. Defendants Combs and Sherman's rapes of plaintiff presented a serious risk of physical injury to her, and in fact caused her significant physical injuries, including burning and pain, bleeding, and bruising. The Combs corporations enabled Combs and or Sherman to commit the crime of violence motivated by gender because Combs and Sherman raped plaintiff at the Bad Boy Studio, where on information and belief they routinely committed sexual assault and gender-motivated violence as detailed in other civil lawsuits. Given Combs and Sherman's long-standing pattern and practice of committing sexual violence against women, including at the same location where they raped plaintiff, the Combs corporations had and or should have had knowledge of Combs and Sherman using the premises for this unlawful conduct, and did nothing to stop it. The Combs corporations enabled Combs and or Sherman to commit the crime of violence motivated by gender by failing to, among other things, protect plaintiff from a known danger and or have sufficient policies and procedures in place to prevent sexual assault and or train their employees on identifying and preventing sexual assault. Given Combs and Sherman's longstanding pattern of practice of committing sexual violence against women, including on premises owned and or operated by defendants, the Combs corporations had and or should have had knowledge, agreed, and did nothing to stop them. The Combs corporations enabled Combs and Sherman to commit the crime of violence. That's the same thing. They did nothing to stop it. They did nothing to stop it. Enabled them because Combs and Sherman used plaintiff's boyfriend's employment as an executive and stated their concerns about his performance at work to lure plaintiff out of her home to meet with them alone. On information and belief, plaintiff alleges that defendant organizational Does 1 through 10, inclusive, are other parties not yet identified who have enabled Combs and or Sherman to commit the crime of violence motivated by gender in the ways articulated above and or in other ways. As a result, plaintiff suffered damages in an amount to be determined at trial and pursuant to the fee-shifting provision of the statute. Second cause of action, plaintiff hereby incorporates by raping plaintiff and recording it. Defendants cause plaintiff to be depicted in a video image unclothed and with intimate body parts exposed and engaging in sexual conduct with another person. Defendants published and or disseminated the video without plaintiff's knowledge or consent. On information and belief, defendants have continued to disseminate the video, including by selling it as pornography through the present. Plaintiff was fully identifiable in the video. Plaintiff had a reasonable expectation that defendants would not secretly record a violent rape of her and disseminate the video to others. By intentionally publicly humiliating plaintiff and trying to ruin plaintiff's romantic relationship, Sherman was employed as his bodyguard, and then eventually became an executive to a degree, at a certain point owning a magazine called Dimes and Rhymes, or Rhymes and Dimes, which also distributed pornography. Yep. We'll get him in the same prison as the other guy. By intentionally publicly humiliating plaintiff and trying to ruin plaintiff's romantic relationship with her then boyfriend when they published the video, defendants had the purpose of harassing, annoying, and or alarming plaintiff. As a direct and proximate result of defendants' actions in violation of New York civil rights law, plaintiff has suffered and continues to suffer emotional harm, including mental anguish, emotional distress, and humiliation in an amount to be determined at trial. Defendants' violations were malicious, willful, wanton, and outrageous, entitling plaintiff to an award of punitive damages. Defendants should be ordered to account for and destroy all copies of the video that are in their actual or constructive possession, custody, or control. Defendants should be temporarily and permanently enjoined from further disseminating or publishing any intimate images of the plaintiff. Third cause, by recording and showing the video of themselves violently raping plaintiff, defendants disclose an intimate image of plaintiff without her consent and in violation of New York City Admin Code. Defendants are covered recipients because they recorded and or caused the video to be recorded themselves. On information and belief, defendants have continued to disseminate the video, including by selling it as pornography through the present. Such intimate images depicted plaintiff unclothed and engaging in sexual conduct with another person. Plaintiff was fully identifiable. Plaintiff had a reasonable expectation that they wouldn't secretly record a violent rape of her and disseminate the videos. Defendants intentionally disclosed and disseminated the video to plaintiff's then boyfriend and others without plaintiff's consent. Defendant's intention in disseminating and publishing the video was to harass, alarm, and humiliate plaintiff and to cause her economic, physical, and or substantial emotional harm. As direct and proximate result of defendant's actions in violation of New York City Administrative Code, plaintiff has suffered and continues to suffer emotional harm, including mental anguish, emotional distress, and humiliation in an amount to be determined at trial. Defendant's violations were malicious, willful, wanton, and outrageous, entitling plaintiff to an award of punitive damages. Defendants should be ordered to account for and destroy all copies of the video that are in their actual or constructive possession, custody, or control. Defendants should be temporarily and permanently enjoined from further disclosing and disseminating any intimate images of plaintiff. Wherefore, plaintiff respectfully requests that judgment be entered against the defendants as follows. Awarding compensatory damages for all physical injuries, emotional distress, psychological harm, anxiety, humiliation, physical and emotional pain, and suffering, family and social disruption, and other harm in an amount to be determined at trial. Awarding punitive damages in an amount to be determined at trial. Awarding attorney's fees and costs pursuant to any applicable statute or law, including under New York City Administrative Code, and any other applicable statute or law. Awarding pre- and post-judgment interest on all such damages, fees, and or costs. Attaching any and all of the defendant's real property and other assets located in the state of New York pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 64. Ordering defendants to account for and destroy all copies of any and all images and videos taken of or in connection with Combs and Sherman's sexual assault of plaintiff that are in their actual or constructive possession, custody, or control, and joining defendants temporarily and permanently from further disseminating or publishing any intimate images or videos of plaintiff, and awarding such other and further relief as this court may deem just and proper. Dated New York, New York, September 24th, 2024. Cuddy Hecker Wang LLP by Marion Meyer Wang, Heather Gregorio, Jasly Liriano, the two attorneys for the plaintiff. That is gross. Gross. I can't. Trying to find something that we can do or watch that might be a nice palate cleanser of sorts. Let's see. Let's see. I don't know if does that have sound? No. Ah, there it is. Y'all hear it?
All right, beer bottle challenge. We're ready. Oh,
right in the face. Oh, right in the face. We're all on the same bus.
And that's okay because we're
my gosh.
done. So I'm going to dump all that water and I'm also going to transfer all of the rice.
Oh my god!
Oh,
Oh, you can't. Is it?
oh no.
That's my down.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I gotta get my glass out of there.
Famous words. Did you record that? Oh no. Oh, I hope so. Oh no. Oh ma'am. That's accurate. Puppy has a hold. Look at those friends. Oh. I love you. I love you. Oh my gosh.
Go see mom, not me.
Adorable.
Okay.
Oh, adorable. Just straight up adorable. I needed that. I needed that a little bit. I am indeed chugging hot sauce. It is Hot Ones. The last dab. A lot of Scoville on that one. I'm gonna regret it, but you know, anything for fun. I'm pretty sure it's that, and also a makeup tutorial, and who knows what else. Oh man, that was quite a. That was something. That was something. I am just well, thanks everybody for saying thank you. I appreciate it, and that it was a good job. Thank you very much. You know, this is not going to be the last one that we cover. Not everything can be a Sarah Boone letter. Coming up is going to be, I think, the final Sarah Boone stuff, and then after that, we're going to be going through that alternative, that document that points to alternative possibilities for Richard Allen, which I have not read either. And so it'll be the first time that you all may have read it, but it'll be the first time I've gone through it, and some of the other folks have read it too. It's not, and you know, there are there are ethical conversations I have within my head, which is reading these things. Does it re-victimize the folks that have gone through so very much? And maybe it is me trying to convince myself that it is a positive thing, or maybe I'm trying to find a reason. I feel like if they go through all of this to tell their story, although this story in these documents is told in a very objective way, I think it's important that stories are told. I think it's important that people know how much of a monster or monsters these people can be. And I just, all of this, what you said, I think it does it. I think it further does a disservice not to read what the victims have worked so hard to put out there. And all of this. This is something that Terry, myself, and our entire team are very passionate about, is giving victims a voice. That's really important to us. So, in the event, for the transcript specifically, if there's anything that you are interested in hearing about from folks, whether it's current or past, feel free to, well, it says got a place for a live show, but do you have an idea? If you have an idea, you can email Tara at tcwtmedia.com. Tara is our producer. Tara is the producer for this one as well as everything else. So it's Tara at tcwtmedia.com. If you have anything that you'd like to see, although we will hit current stuff, I also would love for you all to participate as well and be interested in what we're reading. So that being said, thank you so very, very much for joining me tonight. I know it was very difficult to work through, but we got through it together. That's why I love this community. And hopefully you'll join me next week for the roundup of Sarah Boone and then Richard Allen after that. And just to let you know, October 6th will be the first episode of the new Night Court. And I'm very excited about that. Friday at 9 p.m. is going to be the Hey Ho Show. And that is going to be hysterical. So if you want a nice reprieve from everything else, Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, we will be doing the Hey Ho Show. And it is me and Llama and Rudy. And it is variety of the most epic amount. It's stupid fun. So feel free to join us as well. We also have our regular shows, True Crime and Wine Time Live every other Thursday, Midday Missing Monday and Wednesdays at 12 o'clock Central. And then this one. So a lot of stuff happening. There's also Women on Death Row. Those videos come out. They're going to be coming out every Friday at 7. And then we've got Dearest Mother's Darkest Secret that just came out for members ahead of time. It's gotten really good reviews. And so if you would like to receive videos early or receive members-only stuff, we're planning on some members-only stuff in the next month or two. Feel free to hit the join button. We would love to have you. And if not that's okay. Just subscribe and share us. That's another great way to do it. Hit the like button. All right, I'm done. I'm done with all that. Baloney. Thank you all again. Please take care of yourselves, your friends, your family, and your community. Don't let anybody dull that sparkle. And shine on, you crazy diamonds. I'll see you Friday, 9 Eastern. Till next time.